Hello, we are the Kettlebell Swingers, and today we are going to talk about the accomplished CFO and COO of University of Michigan Health West, Kris Kurtz. We're first going to discuss the organization University of Michigan Health West, and then take a deep dive into what it's like being the CFO and COO of such an accredited medical institution, while simultaneously providing management recommendations for Kris Kurtz. To get a better understanding of how the University of Michigan Health West became what it is today, let's take a look back at their fascinating history. First, we're going to start with their early history, and then we're going to discuss some of their key dates. In 1942, the Grand Rapids Osteopathic Hospital was founded. The hospital was located in a converted house in southeast Grand Rapids on Lake Drive. The idea came about when a group of doctors decided to create a hospital centered around the idea of patient-centered holistic care during the middle of World War II. The hospital was completely paid for by the group of doctors. They took out second mortgages and borrowed on their life insurance policies just to afford their dream of opening up a hospital. The newfound Grand Rapids Osteopathic Hospital contained 28 beds and was promoted as a friendly home of home and hospitality. In 1957, the Grand Rapids Osteopathic Hospital moved to Boston Street in southeast Grand Rapids. This allowed the hospital to further expand. During the mid-1980s, the Grand Rapids Osteopathic Hospital changed their name to Metropolitan Hospital. In 2009, a relationship started to develop between Metro Health and the University of Michigan when the University of Michigan provided radiation oncology services at the Cancer Center in Metro Health Village. During the same year, Metro Health also developed some instrumental clinical relationships as well as expansions in certain sciences. In 2016, the University of Michigan and Metro Health formalized their affiliation with each other. 5 years later, in 2021, Metro Health decided to change their name to University of Michigan Health West. When it comes to corporate culture, which is the shared beliefs and values an organization upholds, University of Michigan Health West has a positive and customer-oriented corporate culture. University of Michigan Health West has 5 shared core values that they stick to no matter what. Those 5 core values are caring, innovation, inclusion, integrity, and teamwork. Their mission is to relentlessly advance health to serve West Michigan, and their vision is our innovations change care, and our care changes lives. Now, if we were to break down the organizational structure of University of Michigan Health West as it relates to the CFO and the COO, then it would look something like this. This organizational chart emphasizes the position of CFO and COO by having these respective positions in the middle. The CFO and COO, Kris Kurtz, finds himself as a member of the C-suite. The C-suite is all the executive level managers in an organization. As you can see, members of the C-suite are as follows. Starting from the left, you have the Chief Digital and Information Officer. Then you have the Chief Medical Information Officer, followed by the Human Resources Officer. Next, you have the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer. Also on the same level, you have the Chief Operating Marketing Officer, the Chief Community Officer, and last but not least is the Chief Nursing Officer. Now, as you can see, the most important member of the C-suite is the Chief Executive Officer, also known as the CEO. The CEO is who Kris Kurtz and the other C-suite members have to report to directly. As for who reports directly to the CFO and COO, Kris Kurtz, you will have your treasurer, tax manager, and controller.
When asking Mr. Kurtz what being a CFO really means, he started to list off many responsibilities. These responsibilities included overviewing financial accounts, budgeting for different departments and programs, and analyzing payroll. All these examples include what himself, as well as different CFOs, do on a day-to-day basis, but he did mention one thing that sets him apart from a different healthcare facility CFO, and this is he takes on strategy planning for the company. His main duty of being a COO is to oversee the different departments' directors and evaluate their performances. Some of these departments can include food, clinical support, and maintenance. Each of these departments have a director, and he will meet with them to analyze how they are doing and what they can do to improve their operations of their everyday management. Chief operating officers are usually seen as second in command underneath the CFO. They oversee day-to-day operations for a particular company. This is somewhat true when asking Mr. Kurtz about his COO position. He said that he only has partial leadership as a COO, even though he still holds the title.
One of the ways that Kris identified a competitive advantage in the healthcare industry was by creating partnerships with other healthcare programs. He said that it allows for a steady inflow of patients. This forces competition to go out and form these partnerships, because if they do not, they will lose a lot of their profitable customers to their competitors. Looking into the competitive analysis of Health West, you notice that the largest competitor on the west side of the state is Spectrum Health. Kris recognized that Spectrum's biggest asset is their ability to send patients to any care facility in the state of Michigan. He also said that Spectrum is able to be more specific with what kind of patients they take in. However, after discussing the advantages that Spectrum Health holds over Health West, Kris proceeded to tell us what he believed gave them the competitive advantage. He said that he believes it's the weight of the big M at the front of the billing. He said with that comes a standard from the head office in Ann Arbor. Patients also going into the hospital expect top care from their trained professionals. He said there's much pressure that comes with making sure that it doesn't matter what location you go to, whether that's in Grand Rapids or Ann Arbor, you'll receive the same service.
A very controversial question stands whether leaders are born or made. Since Mr. Kurtz is looked upon as one of the leaders of University of Michigan Health West, during the interview I asked him his thoughts about this question. He took a second to think before he responded, but then he said he believes that leaders can be developed and made, although he also believes that some leaders are just naturally born. This is due to different personality traits that come naturally to some but not to others. Mr. Kurtz said that leaders are usually extroverts that have skills such as good communication, empathy, and can be flexible. As a matter of fact, Mr. Kurtz mentioned a trait that falls under the big 5 personality traits of being a leader, which includes extroversion. When applying this concept to himself, he said that he was typically an introverted person and leading did not come naturally to him. Throughout the years of his career, he was willing to put in the work and the effort to make it to the C-suite and become a leader. If we went back in time and asked Mr. Kurtz's friends from his teenage years if one day they would think that he would be a CFO and COO of a company, they most likely would not agree. Mr. Kurtz is a prime example of how leaders can be made and not just born naturally, because if you put in the time, work, and effort, you can become a leader yourself.
The workplace of U of M Health West is one of group discussion and community, one that has been built throughout the company's history while maintaining what the founders of the Grand Rapids Osteopathic Hospital intended when it was first formed back in 1942. Since 2011, U of M Health West has been on the list of best and brightest companies to work for in Western Michigan. When asked how they are able to maintain such an environment in the workplace, Mr. Kurtz replied that he believes they are large enough to where they can compete with other large companies and small enough to where they can know the employees by name. In response to this, when looking for new employees, they are looking for people who are able to maintain the current culture. Mr. Kurtz believes that keeping employees on the same page is the hardest part of the job, and communicating with the employees is the most important thing he as a leader could do to bring everyone together. To help with this communication, he holds monthly meetings from around 8 to 4 p.m. solely to communicate with the leadership about any problems or concerns they may have. One issue Mr. Kurtz mentioned was not only are nurses leaving U of M Health West, but the entire health industry as a whole, based on the fact that they are just not interested in the industry. He goes on to say the only way they are able to fix the issue is through retention bonuses. However, he believes these are only a short-term fix, and there is no data backing up that these actually work. Being bored with their job could mean that they are tired of doing the same thing repeatedly, so we believe Mr. Kurtz could apply some sort of job rotation, enlargement, or enrichment to help quell this monotony that has taken over some of his nurses. By giving the nurses more tasks, we believe this will keep the job interesting and new for them, so they are able to extend their careers in the health industry.
Kris Kurtz had an interesting story when it came to his mentors. He talked about how each one showed him a completely different thing. This was one of the most valuable lessons for our team. The third one taught him the most about building a team of people with different skill sets. Essentially, when he was hired to switch out a ton of employees, then this was one of the hardest parts of his life because he had to let go of many, but one that taught him the most about being a leader. He spoke very highly of his fourth mentor, talking about how it helped him in his vice president role. He also learned how to influence people that don't directly report to you. Overall, he gave great advice, and one of his main points was that the jump from the manager to director position was one of the hardest. But everything before and after that is pretty much doing the same work that you've always been. A recommendation from Pink's model. To further dig deep into it, he focuses on motivating people intrinsically, which means motivating people from within. He called this type 1 behavior. The second type he called type X behavior. This was to motivate people through reward and punishment. It may seem like there's one that's better than the other, but it depends on the situation and how it's handled. Now let's move on to application of management theories and topics. Throughout the interview, we were able to apply what we've learned in class by asking questions pertaining to keywords. From finding out that Kurtz is an introvert, learning that there's no standard characteristics that make someone a leader from another. Instead, there are traits that are perceived to be more dominant and leader-like, such as being outgoing, but not all leaders need to have this trait to be one. One of the main parts that was being applied even during the mentoring talk was situational leadership. The first step is directing. This is basically guiding the person and telling them what to do because they don't have thoughts of their own towards the project, job position, and whatever else they're involved in. The second style in the situational leadership model is coaching. This is about selling the company values to whoever it is they're coaching. As we move further into the two other styles, you'll start to notice which ones Kurtz was. The next is supporting, which starts to get into where Kris was with his mentors. The third is delegating, and this is where Kris is now in his career, being the CFO and COO. Now that he's able to support others and direct them, his leadership role and mentors have helped shape him.
Another topic we talked about with Mr. Kurtz was what was his greatest accomplishment, and his response was, it happened back in 2009. This was when Mr. Kurtz and the other C-suite members met up with the University of Michigan to form a partnership to form University of Michigan Metro Health. This partnership helped Health West survive the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009. It also helped them grow in popularity in West Michigan.